Hi, everybody. Welcome. We are kind of coming off the event here from We Robot, and we're kind of looking into how that event kind of impacts everything on the future of AI, the future of robots, and how that can look forward to the future of community colleges. Structuring students' teaching and learning experience to kind of see how they can fit into that future. So just kind of general thoughts on the Wii Robot event. Does everybody want to kind of give general thoughts of, what they thought about like different aspects of it or anything that really stood out?
Well, it's funny you mentioned it. If you want to share my screen quick for fun, I remember coming across this, and so many people, it's 2024, late 2024. So many people have been talking about what does AI mean and what does the future look like and how does it affect things like work and our use of robots. So when these events happen, which I always catch on like social media and stuff like that, it's always sort of a curiosity. But we do seem to be approaching sort of a cultural moment where the technology is getting better, or rather, it's almost ready to impact and uproot lives. I can see behind Shannon, she has that book that we read, I think, earlier this year, Robot Proof. And a lot of what the author there was talking about was cobots, the idea in the future where people would work alongside robots more or control robots. And I know, Caleb, that's something you've talked a lot about too. In fact, I think at this event, people were controlling the robots that were there from a distance or something like that. Is that right?
Yeah, so ideally, they wanted it to be all controlled by AI. They wanted to show off like this AI robot that could do different things based on your commands. It could move on its own. It could do these autonomously. But if you rewatch the recordings, you can really hear them speak and you can kind of understand that it doesn't quite sound like what a robot would sound like. It's stuttering, it's saying a lot of ahs and ums, it's responding way too fast. And there's some times where it's more informal than what an AI voice would generally be if it was being trained off of an LLM. I do think that there were some positives though, where like, if you watch the bartender, the hands articulated very well, like it could grab a glass and put it underneath the tap, and it actually did a really good job of um, thinking about like the amount of pressure that takes for the robot not to snap the handle, not to break the glass, and actually hold the glass and hand it to somebody instead of like dropping it. Like it was pretty impressive there, but it definitely seemed like somebody was behind, like there was a puppet master just kind of
Oh.
behind it all.
I would assume that there probably is, especially as the tech is sort of proven out, right? It's again more human in the loop, right? It's arguably safer to have someone, even if they're 3 states away or three borders away, controlling that bot, or in full control of the bot versus trusting the algorithm to make choices. Obviously, we've seen like the what is it, Boston Dynamics, like the MIT robots that they've been doing, the strapping machine guns and leaf blowers to those. So yeah, but it would seem to be better and safer to have a human in the loop. But you were sort of talking about some of the labor ramifications, or what does it mean in terms of offshoring or reshoring? Like where does labor live right now, right? If you don't have to move the factory, but you can hire workers remotely, which has already happened to tons and tons of industries, obviously for technical work like this. I could see how that'd be attractive to some businesses, but that requires humans, and then the ultimate future, a lot of these things won't necessarily require humans if that's how they're sort of arranged or designed. So yeah, Robot Proof talked so much about trying to prepare, and institutions of higher ed, specifically community colleges, being very well placed to be ready for whatever happens when it comes to these technological innovations, and to prepare for a world in which people will probably need to be retrained and come back to education in ways that culturally they never have, as 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, even 60-year-olds coming back to learn something that so that they can apply a new skill set for 4 or 5 years before they learn something else. So that has ramifications for degree, program design, right? Credit for prior learning. We might have to think, depending on what the technology, how good these robots get, we have to rethink a lot of how we deliver instruction at the community college level and recognize competency, right? And structure learning and build communities where people can learn and innovate and collaborate and keep up with this. One thing I'm stuck on, and invite your thoughts, both of you, on this, is the ways in which I can't keep up with this, right? It's impossible for me to understand and then be able to anticipate the next innovation that comes along. Anytime I sort of try to make a prediction about what's possible in terms of AI or automation, the reality outstrips my ability to imagine it. So it almost seems like we should almost, in terms of what we do in higher ed, we should prepare for something we can't prepare for. We should think as big as possible about what we could do, because that might be the outcome we get in terms of a world turned upside down in 3 years, 6 years, whatever it is, you know, in terms of what robots can do specifically.
Yeah, I think we're already working alongside robots, right? In a lot of ways. You know, we use ChatGPT and tools like that every day in our work already. I've been using it to dictate notes. You basically using it as a personal assistant already. And that's just going to become more and more prominent, I think. And it doesn't, you know, in some ways it's not taking away a job, it's taking away parts of my job, but that frees up time to do more in-depth and, you know, more complex thinking and things like that. So in some ways I think I see the real benefit there.
Right. And I wonder, like, the interface now is like chatbots, which we access, which we'll probably end up accessing a lot from here. But I think about like the first Nintendo, the first home entertainment console, the first home television, right? The ways in which an external box, or an iPod, right? iPod Nano, whatever the first one really was, the device that has the breakthrough that changes, upends sort of people's lives. So the little robot that sits in your desk that looks like Furby or a Gremlin or something like that, Gizmo, is cute. And then suddenly now it's a pet, now it's a tool, now it's an assistant, now it's a member of my family. Like, the way you think about it changes, and then the way that people think about robots in general could potentially rapidly change. Less a threat, more a friend, an ally, someone to talk to even, right? That's the world I'm sort of really curious about what that looks like in terms of our relationships with these tools. Like, the personification of these tools already happened, but when it has a face, it will be very hard not to think of it in terms of a person. And we've been playing around with tools like Notebook LM, which can generate a podcast about your syllabus, which sounds like two humans talking. It sounds like any other podcast from NPR or something like that. That's a pretty wild world. And that powers learning in new ways. Students can really reappropriate, take ownership of, remix education materials. And whether we want it or not, students are going to control their learning experience a lot more because of these tools. So much of it is out of our hands and in the students' hands now, potentially too.
I mean, we're already personalizing it, you know, that you can change voices, and the voices sound so realistic now that it does feel like you're talking to a person a lot of the time, you know. You made me think of this meme that I saw where it was like an elementary teacher who said all of the glue sticks in her class always went missing until she named them. And as soon as she started writing names on them, students were devastated when Bob went missing. You know, I just think about how easy it is to personify things. And that's true. I'm sure we can all think of similar examples. We've got spiders in our bathroom and they all have names, you know, and Violet, my daughter, is devastated if one of them goes missing. So yeah. So having a name on a chatbot or a personalized voice like that, it really is, we're going down a rabbit hole, I think, that we're maybe not ready for.
Would we ever be ready for it?
Probably not.
Could we stop it? That's another sort of topic, especially as it relates to higher ed. There's sort of occasionally people who are just like regulate, put the brakes on. I know Caleb shares tons of news about what these companies are doing sort of behind the scenes, and it's hard not to see the drama that's sort of emerging and the uncertainty about why so many people around like safety are like leaving, and what does that mean? I know you posted something, Shannon, the other day, and I was like, oh, this is pretty generic. But the deeper I got, the more there did seem to be a coherent message about worry about that future. But part of me thinks, couldn't you put it back in the box at this stage in any way, shape, or form? I can't imagine that you can.
No.
Yeah.
And
you can criminalize bad behavior that results from it, but
yeah. Well, and one of the big things to think about too is kind of how certain products are already in our lives that would make it easy to integrate AI into. So like Amazon, Google, Apple, they all have things that we use constantly.
Yes.
And you know, that people would never think of having in their homes. And now it's like you can use them to turn on and off your lights, check the weather, check news stories, and then suddenly you add a little bit of an AI assistant to there that actually sounds how you want it to sound and produces the information you want. You get so reliant on that, and then it just kind of grows. And like you said, Jordan, there's some things that are exploding far beyond what we thought was possible. Because I remember when AI video generation started, and that was like that one that always stands out is that Will Smith eating spaghetti. And it was just like terrible. It was just all warped. Yeah, right. And you know, after that video happened, it wasn't, you know, everybody was like, oh, AI video is a long ways off. Like we are, you know, a decade away from this being so like anything usable. And then suddenly we have 4 or 5 different companies that are coming out with these amazing videos that almost look like photoreal, and you can extend them. You can have so many different things that come out of them.
If you want to share the screen, I'll play silently the Will Smith spaghetti. My apologies to Will Smith, the entire Smith family for showing this. Yeah. Yes. Right. The still images are so much better. These tools. I'll stop. That's enough of a horror show. But the ways in which these tools are built in, I know it's now when I upload a video to YouTube, it's asking me if I want to generate an AI generated image as my still for the video. You know, it just, now it's become ubiquitous. And the way you described it, Caleb, as you become reliant on it in one place, and that becomes a foundation. And then it's known and you use it, and then they build on top of that. Right now, it's hard. Like it would be difficult for me to not use the Amazon assistant on my phone to try to get to my orders, because I found that the little assistant, which has a name, again, they try to personalize it. I forget what its name is. It's like a dog's name. That's all I remember. I know now how to get that to do what I want. And so that's, instead of trying to search or find within the settings, I'm searching. It's search evolved. It's personalized search. It's cognitive search, which is really useful because they've been training us to search for a very long time, like Google, right? For 20 plus years now, 25 years. So we know how to search for stuff, and this is a better widget, better tool. And so we're going to choose it if it gives us more of what we want. So I think the cat's out of the bag and the robots are coming, I think is my message here.
Definitely. And the future is so unknown right now too, because you could have all these different jobs that go away because robots enter the picture and they become more affordable and more accessible. Like we were saying earlier, is maybe they put people in them, so we train students how to be using robots in 3D space using like a VR set, kind of like you would like a CNC, kind of machine. Is you teach them how to.
I'm glad you said that, because so many careers today that we talk about as like temple jobs, good family jobs and things like that involve computers and technology in ways that didn't 20 or 30 years ago. We've gotten very used to being that's what work looks like. This is just an evolution. I remember like working in Texas, like the fracking oil field business, like we were training on like multi-million-dollar equipment, like community college students to run these machines. It all looked new and fancy, but it was at its core technical 1-year program. And some of these, like what you're describing, what's being introduced at the cutting edge, might very much fit into a lot of how we offer a lot of those courses. I think I started this conversation talking about how the program sequence and design might need to change. We might also be surprised by the ways in which very futuristic careers fit into the existing framework. Maybe they're a little flexible. Maybe it's CBE. Maybe the technology looks a little bit different. But it's quite possible that community colleges are very well placed already to deliver short-term training, year-long training, or 2-year degrees that fit into the new economy, whatever's coming here.
I've heard a lot of talk, and I probably have said some of it about this like upskilling and going, micro-credentialing and things like that with relation to learning AI skills. And then I think about the fact that maybe actually liberal arts education will become more important because of the lack of critical thinking involved in what is generated from AI, and the need for us to be able to determine whether things are generated with AI and look for misinformation and disinformation and things like that.
Yes.
And also, just having a conversation with my 13-year-old who's interested in welding about how he might want to think about a program that is more of an associate's or bachelor's level, because he'll have more skills. And if welding becomes an automated thing, right, in the next few years, or, shortly after he graduates, he'll be able to maybe be on the engineering side of it, or do something that's relevant, but isn't maybe the actual technical skill of welding, because I don't know if that's still going to be a human job.
That nimbleness seems to be required. I had something else you were talking about, like the future. Oh, the liberal arts degree, right? Like if we're being fed, or if the market dictates that work is being freed and given to robots, we probably have more free time, or some people do, for creative artistic endeavors.
Yeah,
and they'll want to express what's human. And conversely, if they want to produce it, no one wants it, that's fine. They might want to do that. There might be an arts reemergence, right? But simultaneously, we might want more art, real art. Like I'm imagining a future where 9/10 of the television programs are AI generated kind of garbage for a couple of years, and maybe there's a couple gems in the rough. But like in that world, like the most human thing might be the thing I really want. We might really reward creators in a way that we still haven't, right? Yeah. So yeah, humans, like we might value humanity a lot more
Yeah.
in a way that we don't currently, which is really interesting, and there's a lot of potential there. Then people might specialize in living a different sort of lifestyle away from these things. Like we might have now I'm getting a big picture here, philosophical, but we might have people try to break away from some of these systems and kind of reject, these kinds of lifestyles or these kinds of tools, which might be really interesting too. Might have
And that's
kind of what I'm driving at.
Yeah, and that's where I see some real potential and exciting opportunities for us as educators. Like maybe we won't have to, well, we already know that we can spend less time generating quizzes and study guides and things like that with AI now, and spend more time on meaningful feedback or interacting with our students or developing better content or redesigning, making the updates we've been wanting to make for years but just didn't have time to do. And I think that that's just going to become even more so in the future as AI becomes more complex, and also as we learn to use it better, because we probably can already do a lot more with it that we just haven't figured out yet.
Right. Delivering a newly rehumanized education in a world of technologicalization, like personalization, concentration, knowing our students, and working with our students on their own individual goals, which might be really different and might really be sort of just more disparate than they used to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whew. Final thoughts? What are your thoughts, Caleb? You gonna buy one of these automated cars that drive themselves?
Not sure if I'll do that just yet. Once the infrastructure gets a little bit better, because the hard part right now is going to be there's not like those new ones, those robotaxis that they unveiled. Those are going to have wireless charging pads and they have no ports on them whatsoever.
Right. Oh, that's cool.
And so, in order to do something like that, I don't think we have the infrastructure yet for that to exist outside of Silicon Valley.
I used to have students. Oh, go ahead, Caleb. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, if people like Elon Musk really wanted to be popular and make money, they should focus less on cars that drive themselves and more on things that will do the dishes and clean, Rosie's from the Jetsons, right? Like actual day-to-day task completers, because I think that would be much more useful to the average person.
Interesting. I used to ask students in the sort of nascent days of Tesla, if a car pulled up with no driver, would they get in? Right? Just this kind of like, would you trust like the robot? So we're in a slightly different world now, but I that's where I'm leaning. I would, right? I would bet on the innovators in terms of this. I would bet on our culture reacting to what technology does, and I think we will change as a result of kind of what's possible. And so I'm actually pretty excited about the potential of what it means in terms of like where people live and like the environmental impact of potentially that. Like if you don't have to drive your car, cities might be a little less congested. There could be some really interesting like knock-on benefits in terms of population and people having yards and things like that if they want them. I don't know. I'm still excited by the cars, but yeah, it's that first tutor robot that helps your kid, with writing or arithmetic or something like that, or the first Rosie that is probably the game changer. So we all need to leave higher ed and join the private industry and work on eventual.
Yeah, probably have a life that looks like Bicentennial Man, just have a personal butler. But there are robots that are doing that right now. So there's some that it's kind of creepy. They're just like tracks with like a stem and then there's an actual robot on top. But
yes,
they have some that are coming out. I think they're like 15 grand or something like that. But they can do laundry, they can do dishes, they can do all these different things. And like they don't have necessarily like a face yet. But that's kind of like where the industry is going, is trying to make them do more things in the house that a human could do, because we just have too many human things versus like the robotic stuff. And then the other side of it too is that they're also trying to make them appear more friendly, so it's easier to accept it in. So those are two things that are definitely getting better, because they have some. I mean, like the Optimus robot, it technically has a face. It kind of has that big black kind of faceplate, but like you can see it has those human characteristics. And then just like what we do with pretty much anything, like you look at an animal and you're like, I bet it's thinking this. You kind of give that.
AI is doing some interesting work in decoding animal communication patterns. Have you seen this at all?
Yeah, yeah. I saw the one about whales, and wasn't there one about dolphins where they named each other and they were able to discern like how they could do names based off their clicks and stuff.
I was seeing something about birds or something like that. Wild. My last question is: what are the odds of the worst case scenario? Bishop from Aliens, Terminator. What are the odds that it all goes haywire? What do you think? Greater or less than 1%?
So what are you asking? What are the odds that the robots
Like
win?
the dystopian future, like the worst case scenario. Robots win, take over, whatever. Matrix. We're all batteries, whatever it is. You've never seen the Matrix, Shannon, so. Sorry.
I don't think we'll ever get to the point where we'll be batteries because we're highly inefficient. But I think there is a good possibility that most of our life will be taken over by something, like almost to the point where like you don't even need a grocery store anymore. You just order something, you drive up, and it just slots it right in, and you drive away. Or like,
I already do
interacting with the computer. Right. Yeah. And a whole automated process where it's not even a grocery store anymore. It's just like, just a chunk that just says Kroger or something on it, and you just get it dumped out to you.
Think of like the ghost kitchen concept, right? Like it's piece by piece by piece, but think about how the world has changed with things like Uber and things like that, and patterns and human behaviors. And COVID obviously sort of accentuated that and normalized some of that. Work from home. Do you remember rushing to the office to be there at 8 and how critical and important that was, and every other role? And then like COVID came along, and like cultural patterns and habits and ideas sort of changed a little bit about that kind of stuff, where old rules fell away. And so I think that's what we're in for, is a lot of old rules that we've really kind of clung to and assume are kind of permanent. They will fall away. Like the arc of history shows that, we're talking about Americans, we're in the United States, Americans do react and change, even if it's sometimes sort of unexpected or a little bit scary. But we'll choose it, and we'll have a choice. I think that's important that we try to preserve those through higher ed as much as we can. That might be a good goal that we can share.
Maybe we will be able to be less productive as humans, right? Like maybe we can have a shorter work week or fewer hours workday because our robots can take over the menial stuff.
Productivity keeps going up, but median income keeps basically staying the same, right? So the average worker isn't getting a lot for being more efficient. So this might be a reward of some sort. You might view it like that to some extent, or it could enable, that might enable a little bit of justice when it comes to that, potentially, some of these tools.
Yeah.
As long as they're accessible to people and introduced to people.
Yeah. And as scary as it sounds to have people lose positions or jobs or anything because something might take over, the other benefit to that is also kind of cheaper. They're not paying for a whole lot more, but I guess that also comes down to another conversation on universal income and just kind of things that would actually like help people out in these displaced situations that will happen or may happen.
Right.
Right.
Well, and there are some jobs that, are major safety concerns that maybe it would be a better thing if a robot took it over,
Right. If a robot can do it, the human is capable of more than that then, right?
I think it just goes to show that we need to make a case for why we are important as humans, and that goes back to the critical thinking and the creativity and the art and all of that stuff. So yeah, I see that as being the thing that saves us, right? In terms of
our value to others, right?
Value,
yeah. Others,
Yep. Take us back to ancient Greece, where philosophers were like the height of society.
Let's go. I'm ready.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Good Friday conversation.
Game over.